Hello and welcome. It's taken 10 months, but we're going to be talking about Trails of Cold Steel 4. There will be a lot of spoilers, and as was requested, I'm not going to put a time limit on this video. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, and I'm not going to try and rush. So, if this is longer than an hour, I hope that it is interesting the whole way through. But there will absolutely be spoilers in this video because it's the ninth game in the series and everything has tied into this game. So, if you are leery of spoilers and you're curious if you should play this game, yes, you should after you play all the others. You should play Sky FC, Sky SC, Sky the Third, Zero, Azure, Cold Steel 1, Cold Steel 2, Cold Steel 3, and then Cold Steel 4. It's a very, very good game. I recommend it. I really like it. You will hear my ranking at the end, but I honestly think this game is great. I really, really enjoy it. And I have not talked to anybody really about everything, so that I would have my bare thoughts here, right? So without further ado, spoilers start now. I want to talk about this game. And I have, because I don't want to forget anything, right? I have the story pulled up. I have every chapter pulled up so I can remember what happened in them. I have the list of characters. I have so much to talk about. But the first thing I want to talk about is the music, because I think that in Cold Steel 4, the music this is maybe my favorite soundtrack. I think that it has some great callbacks, right? But it also has some really good new tracks. I think Feel at Home, Wind Across the Water, Lyrical Amber, I think it's called. All of those are great. I love both credit songs. I think they're both really, really good. Always by Your Side is an incredible song. And I think that it's got music from the previous games in it, right? You have the Ouroboros theme, you have the Michelin theme, and then you have all these new songs that are really, really good. Including like Betting the Fate of the World and The End of Saga, which are two incredible themes. Yeah, I think Azure and Sky SC also like stand head and shoulders above, right? But I think where Cold Steel 4 really shines for me with the soundtrack is that it includes some of that stuff, right? The moment towards the end of the game when the drums from Cold Steel 3's title menu start playing, I lost my mind. So yeah, I think this is my favorite soundtrack out of all of them. Radiant Hope is such a pretty song, and I Know Ita is really, really good too, right? I think that this soundtrack is incredible. I'm gonna go ahead and say, yeah, I think this is for sure my favorite soundtrack out of the entire series. Even though I think some of the other games, like Silver Will, is still one of the best battle themes. Dark Throne is an incredible theme, but I think this is my favorite soundtrack for sure. I really, really like it. Let's talk about some of the other stuff before we get into the story, right? Gameplay wise, I really liked the gameplay in this one. I think that this is now my favorite version of the orbit system, and it took so little to fix it for me. Making it where you can reuse subquarks as much as you want meant that I could do basically anything with my people. And so some of them I narrowed down very specific paths, right? And some of them I tried to make jack of all trades, which actually wound up working out really well towards the end when I needed multiple parties. But Kurt was in my party almost the entire game because I invested so heavily into evasion and then gave Kurt the subquarks that lets him dodge magic attacks too, to where Kurt just like never died, basically. And his auto attacks were always crits, his counter attacks were always crits, and he just did incredible damage. He was guaranteed damage as long as he was on the field, right? Instead of building Yuna into break damage the way I did in 3, I built her into HP, and she became a tank without me even realizing at first that I could do it because of how good her HP regen is at high levels. Because she doesn't just regen on her turn, she regens on everyone's turn. I turned Ash into a high-end break damage. I turned Randy, we're going to talk about Randy, I turned Randy into a pure defense tank that just could take any hits and still stand, right? I made Crow, a crit machine, where Crow crit basically every time he attacks something, and I just made Reen do so much damage. The first move of every battle, Reen could basically just destroy things because I gave him the quartz that lets him do extra damage on the first turn, and then I gave him the emblem subquartz so that he always has 200 CP before I go into a fight, and then I just spammed 200 S-Craft, and it just destroyed things. It made grinding so easy, and I didn't even really need to grind, right? But I could if I wanted to. I think that this orbment system is really, really solid because by being able to mix and match that, you can basically change up your builds on the fly. If you suddenly need somebody else to be able to do something else, you can do that. I guess I already we're in spoilers, right? I mentioned that earlier. I've already mentioned Crow without even thinking about it. I flip-flopped 3 or 4 times for builds for Duvalie before I finally settled on just, hey, here's a bunch of damage and a pretty standard crit rate and a pretty decent evasion rate. Go for it, Duvalie. And she was really good. Yeah, we're going to talk about characters and my preferred teams and everything. But gameplay-wise, this game's really good. This is my favorite one to play, I think, and the one I'm most looking forward to replaying because of how much more busted it will get. And I know there's some Master Quartz that I missed because I didn't finish Vantage Masters. I didn't beat every enemy in Vantage Masters. Now, you may say, but Trey, why wouldn't you? You loved Vantage Masters and Blades both before. Well, that's because I found a new game called Palm Party. And I became the Palm Party champion. And some of those matches took a while. I played for 20 minutes straight against Ellie at one point. And I'm not talking like 20 minutes losing, retry. I'm talking a straight 20-minute match. It was like 19 minutes to beat Ellie. But I did it. And I absolutely adored Palm Party. That was one of my favorite things about this game, was getting to play Palm Party against these characters and getting to have a really, really good time there. I'm so glad they added that in. I think the fishing is the best it's ever been. Cold Steel 3 fishing was already really good. Cold Steel 4 fishing is even better. You can get a lot of the upgrades really early on, which means fishing's not necessarily difficult, but it is still skill required. You have to be careful, right? Which means that you can really shine with fishing by just playing around with it, just spending a little bit of time with it. And I did eventually become the angler, the angler god, I think is what it's called. I caught all the fish, I really had a lot of fun with a lot of the side content in here. I did just about every side quest. I think I missed a couple secret ones in the early chapters, but I got S's on everything else later on. I really like this game. So let's talk, now that we've talked soundtrack, combat system, we've talked everything else there, mini games, let's talk story. And I think the best way to do this is, because I want to talk characters and I want to talk main plot. So I think the easiest way is to go through the main plot and stop to talk about the characters as we acquire them, right? So I think the prologue is really good. There is like 35, maybe 45 minutes of cutscenes before you get to play. And Ulster gets introduced there. And there's some stuff that happens with Ulster that's like, okay, it's clear there's another radio drama that I missed. Don't know who any of these people are. But that's okay. I think the game does a pretty good job of explaining it, right? I think that whole prologue of setting up, hey, Prince Olivert is dead. Things are bad. The curse is taking hold. Reen is gone. Milliam's dead. We don't know what's gonna happen. We have escaped. And things are bad. I think that all that setup is great. And then you get into the prologue where you have Estelle and Joshua and Ren. And you have Lloyd, Ellie, and Kia. And you already know how I feel about these characters. I think that this game only makes them better. I think that Estelle maybe could have got a little bit more time to shine, but every time she is on screen, she is being Estelle, and it is great. She is marvelous. She's also a beast in combat. Her S-Craft Wheel of Time is incredible in this game. It does so much single target damage. And yeah, Estelle is just, she's Estelle. She's great, right? Joshua is also still really, really good. There's a moment, I have a couple screenshots that I took that are really important to me. There is a moment where Joshua is basically like, later on with the stuff with Ash, right? Which we'll get into there, where Joshua explains how, he feels bad now because he had left Joshua, or he had left Ash, right? And that he's just happy to know that he survived. And it stood out to me because FC Joshua would have never said any of those words, right? But the Joshua that we have reached now has grown so much as a person that he no longer internalizes that stuff. And yeah, Joshua is a treasure in this game. He is so great. I love Joshua in this game. I think that they did such a good job with him. Rin is still great. She is incredible. The stuff with her and the Hayworths is heartbreaking, where she finds them and is like, well, it'll be okay. And then she finds Harold Hayworth when he's on his way to war. And look, you all know, if you've watched these reviews, how I feel about Ren. She's one of my favorite characters. She absolutely deserves the world, and she deserves to be able to have a happy ending where she is Ren Bright, but she also gets to spend time with the Hayworths. And just that moment where she's like clearly heartbroken about the fact that he's leaving to go to war, and she wants him to be okay. Yeah, Ren is incredible in this game. She gets to still be Ren. She gets to still do cool stuff, but she also gets to have those tender moments that you expect from Ren at this point. And I think they did a great job with her. Lloyd is still Lloyd, inspiring people to move forward and overcome their barriers. And you can really tell in this game the effect that Lloyd's comments about overcoming barriers has had on Reen, where Reen starts to say it, and Lloyd at one point seems a little surprised that he hears Reen saying it. But it's clear that it has infected Reen as well, right? The desire to overcome your barriers that are in your way. And so Lloyd is still really good in this game. There's a line that Lloyd has that I saved as well that is basically just like, where is it? Here it is. I'd like to thank you for the consideration, though not half as much as I'd like to deck you in the face. And that's Lloyd. That's just Lloyd. I think that Ellie maybe could have gotten a little bit more time to get into the stuff with her and Maribel, but also this isn't her game, just like Estelle, right? This isn't her game, so I get why there's not a lot of time spent on that, and I do think that Una does a pretty good job of being that bridge between new Class 7 and just Class 7 as a whole and the SSS and getting to stick it to Maribel a little bit. So I think Ellie's really solid in this game. The side quest with her mom is really, really good. I know I'm not spending a lot of time on these characters, but it's because I've kind of already talked about them, and they don't really grow in this game. They've already grown, They just get to be cool in this game, which is great. But yeah, that's, you get this prologue. And then Kia, of course, is Kia. She's incredible. She's great. She's got the ability to look into causality now, which seems to be a holdover from when she was the Septarian. But sure, yeah, okay. I mean, she can predict some things, but she's not all-knowing, So sure, why not? I think that intro is really good. And that intro does a lot of things, right? It lets you play as Estelle and Joshua and Lloyd and Ellie. It lets you play as Ren and gets you spending some time with Kia. It also explains that, hey, things have gotten so bad that Lloyd and Joshua and Estelle and Ellie are here now. They are in Erebonia now, trying to solve all this. I guess technically they're in Crossbell, but you know what I mean. They're taking care of this problem, because nobody knows what's going to happen now. They have to be aware of it. They have to be a part of it. And it also reminds you that Claire is not convinced. She knows that this is what she needs to do, but her heart is breaking. And we'll get into Claire in a little bit because there's a lot I want to say about Claire. But I think this is a really good intro. I think it does a lot to sell you on how powerful Osborn has become and how everything is falling apart, while also giving you that little bit of hope, which is, well, yeah, I mean, things are bad, but Estelle's here, and Lloyd's here, and so it's going to be okay. Hopefully. And to cut from there almost immediately to the Aaron Village, and New Class 7 wakes up, and one of the first things that happens is that Millium is mourned. Everybody, like, Altina gets to cry for Millium, right? Which is a very heartbreaking scene. and is very sad. And then as new Class 7, as Yuna, you go around the city, you go around Aaron Village, and you talk to everybody, and you find out that Randy's there, and Roselia's there, and old Class 7 is there, except for Reen and Milliam. And you find out what everybody's going through, and you see Eustace, who is destroyed. And you see Laura, who is destroyed because her dad is dead, as far as she knows. It's a really touching scene, because you have, like, Gaius going, if only I was more powerful, then maybe I could have stopped it. And it's very poignant, right? It's this powerful moment of, hey, we've carried forward all this time, but now we've lost again. We lost Crow before, and now we've lost again. And then we get to the only scene in this game that I don't like. And this, I might get crucified in the comments for this, right? But it's the only scene in the game that I don't enjoy. And it is, I mean, there are a couple of Angelica scenes that I don't like either, really. But this is the only scene I dislike, right? We'll get to Angelica, because I think she is a problem. It's the scene where Yuna tells Class 7 that they need to shape up and go rescue Reen. And I think that's fine, right? I don't think the idea of it is bad. My problem with the scene is that Yuna is telling people that are mourning the death of their loved ones that have been awake for like a day and are actively planning ways to get back, that they need to stop mourning and get themselves in gear when she has just woken up. And again, I think it'd be different if Class 7 had been there for like a week awake and not just a day. Because if it'd been a week, then I'd go, well, yeah, no, they need to get together here. But it was like a day, man. Give them a chance to mourn. Laura just lost her dad. Eustace just lost Milliam, and they all don't know what's going on with Reen. Give them a chance to mourn. And I think what makes the scene stand out so much, and it's why I don't like it so much, is that the series has been so careful over all the games to have the old characters support the newer characters, and the new characters be lifted up by the older characters, right? It has never had them just like outright going, hey, you suck, I'm the new one, I'm better. Which is not what this scene is, but because of the way it's portrayed, it's what it feels like. And I didn't like that at all. It really felt to me like Yuna was throwing a fit at him because she didn't know that Reen was Gileath Osborne's son, and they did. And it was like, you know, hey, you're useless. And that's not what she said, but it's what it felt like, right? But other than that, I really like Yuna, and I want to talk about Yuna now. Because even though the rest of Class 7 is like, yeah, you talked us out of it, you made us remember what we need to be doing. I think that instead, if it had been like Randy, that was like, hey, I know you're hurting, but we need to go save Reen. I think that might have had more of an effect. Or if it, because Ash is gone and Muse's gone, right? If it had been Altina, who was like, hey, I know you're all upset, I'm mourning too, but we need to go save Reen. I think it might have landed better for me. It's just the way that Yuna said it that really didn't sit right. Now, let's talk about Yuna. Because I think that Yuna is kind of the main character for this first half of the game, right? Before you go save Reen. And I like Yuna a lot. I mentioned that in the last, in Cold Steel 3. I like Yuna a lot in Cold Steel 3 as well. I think I like her better in Cold Steel 3 than I do in Cold Steel 4, but I still really like her. I think my biggest issue with Yuna is that speech and the fact that she winds up romanceable later, and I think that's just because I'm misunderstood. I thought from the stuff in Cold Steel 3 they were doing something with her and Kurt, so maybe I'm just a filthy shipper, but it felt really weird to have her suddenly be like, oh, maybe I also feel this way too. But other than that, I think Yuna's a really great character in this game. Her stuff with Campanella, where she's like, hey, Crossbell aside, because a lot of Yuna's lines boil down to stuff about Crossbell, right? Crossbell aside, you specifically tick me off, and I want you to stop. I think that's really interesting. Giving her own sub-villain, right, is really cool, especially since they each of the new Class 7 has their own thing they're going for, and Yuna's is kind of, I'm going to hit Campanella in the face, which I can appreciate. I think that's pretty good motivation, you know? Obviously, she wants to rescue Reen as well and help her friends and help save the world and save Crossbell. But I think that Yuna is a really solid character in this game. And out of the characters, I think she's probably the best one to choose to be the, like, main leader. I think Altina is the best written character out of the 5 New Class 7, with maybe Ash coming up right behind her. But I think that Yuna is like the heart of New Class 7 in a lot of ways, in the way that Reen was for Old Class 7, right? So her being your main character here makes sense. I think that her joining the harem, as it were, yeah, it caught me by surprise, but I'm not upset by it. I just didn't romance her, right? That's the solution to me. Altina can technically be romance too, and I didn't do that. She's Reen's daughter in my mind. But again, if you want to romance, you go for it, man. It's whatever. No, I like Yuna a lot. And again, I used Yuna a lot because I made Yuna absolutely broken. But I like Yuna a lot as a character. I think that there's a scene towards the end of the game where I can see some people, especially people that don't like Yuna, being upset by that scene, right? Because it's like, well, Yuna figured out something with Ouroboros that nobody else has. It's like, yeah, but Yuna did that, and they try to explain it to you in that scene. Yuna figured that out because she was talking her thoughts out vocally. She's been trained by Lloyd to be a detective, and she's been trained by Reen in the way of his sense, right? His ability to the void, right? To be able to see the light in the darkness. And so all she's doing is just putting both those things in practice and going, hey, wait, hold on. This doesn't feel right. I want some answers. And like it all just worked out where she figured it out. Anybody else could have if they had put that thought in. But I really like that it was Yuna because it makes sense for it to be her, you know? I like Yuna a lot as a character. I also really like Kurt. You get control of Kurt at this point as well. I love Kurt Vander. Kurt Vander is one of my favorite characters in this entire series. I have seen some people in the comment section call him bland. And I get why you might think that, right? I understand where you're coming from. But I find him not to be bland at all. I think he takes the idea that both Reen and Laura represent as swordswomen, and Duvally to a point as well, right? And like ramps that up as I'm not as good as they are. I want to be. So instead of turning to power the way that Rufus does, which we'll talk about Rufus later, or Cedric does, he turns to learn. He applies himself. He dedicates himself. And I really love all of his bonding events in this game. I think that the story of him trying to be like his ancestor Roland is really, really good. Getting Roland's swords, you know, and standing up against the evil that is attacking Erebonia. Getting to be recognized by some of the greatest swordsmen in Erebonia just really cements that moment for Kurt for me, where it's just like, yeah, no, he's standing shoulder to shoulder with these. He thinks he's not as good as they are, but he absolutely is. And then you have Kurt in combat, where Kurt became the most broken unit on my team because I just did the same thing I did in Cold Steel 3. I made him a super evasion guy, and every evasion counterattack was a crit, and then gave him a bunch of strength. So then Kurt never got hit, evaded everything, and killed everything on his turn, or on their turns, which, you know, meant that Kurt was always in my team. So yeah, Kurt Vander. I like him a lot. Also, I gave him the white hat, and he wore that hat for the entire game. I really like New Class 7's new outfits. I think they look really good. It's kind of jarring when you get a scene towards the end of the game and they're back in their branch campus outfits, because of course they are, right? They went back to school, and Kurt's still wearing the white hat, because I really liked their CS4 outfits. But yeah, Kurt Vander, he's great, man. I love Kurt Vander. I think that Kurt really shines in the showdown against Cedric at the end, right? He puts himself out there and he talks Cedric back from that cliff in a way that I don't think anybody else really could have. I really like Kurt Vander a lot. I really like Altina as well, Altina Orion. I think that Altina, there's like a like after you rescue Reen and get to do some stuff, there's a section where Altina doesn't really pop up in the story at all, and it's kind of a shame. But I think that the entire first half, Altina is incredible. And I think that when you get into the end, the stuff towards the end, Altina just is so good. I love Altina. Desperately trying to find a way to support Reen, a way to make up for the fact that she did not succeed and Milliam died in her place. Uh, just constantly trying to do too much and getting overwhelmed. She is so much like Reen in that way, and I just, she's a precious little black rabbit. I love her. She's great. Precious little daughteroo. Yeah, I love Altina. Altina's incredible. She gets a really cool S-craft later on, where Clamsoleus can split into two and one turns into a sword. Yeah. Heck yeah. Go for it, Altina. I'm here for it. I really like Altina a lot. You also get Randy at this point. And you know what they say? Any day where you have Randy Orlandi is a great day. No, I love Randolph Orlando. Randy is so good. Randy's one of my favorite characters in the series. He has been ever since Zero. Azure just cemented that for me and jumped him up places, right? And the fact that not only do you get to play with Randy, you also get to have Randy in your party for most of this first section, right? It's really good. Randy, he doesn't have Crimson Gale, unfortunately, but he does have Berserker, and it's very good. Randy, just a great character all around. The moment where you're on, and I've got it pulled up here too, the moment where you're on the ship and Randy just like holds out his fist for that fist bump with Lloyd, it's really, really good. I love Randy, and I think that getting control of him so quickly is one of many great choices that Cold Steel 4 does with characters. Randy's great. I think this whole first chapter where you're taking Yuna, Kurt, and Altina with Randy into the Aaron village. What is it called? I've got it. Completely forgot the name of the place. The in the Erie Woods. The place you go in there to fight. Hold on. I'm pulling it up. Because you got to go in there and then you fight Roselia. The St. Grawl Labyrinth. That's it. Which I thought was interesting the first time I saw the name because Grawl. The Grawl. But very, very cool. The Roselia fight is a lot of fun. I liked it. I like Aaron Village a lot. I think that it is a really fun hub for the first part of the game, right? Getting to go back and soak in the hot springs or having all of this. Because these people really do, the people of Aaron Village really do wind up shining in their own way, right? You speak to Gandalf or you speak to Sigyn or Owler, right? And you get to know these people in a really cool way because you're coming back to them so often. And I think that part of that is like Leaves is a relatively big city. Trista is a relatively big city, right? There's a lot of different people. But Aaron Village is just a village. There's like 12 people at most, right? And so by making that part smaller, even though your cast is bigger, you do get a more homey feel from it. And I think the Aaron Village track is an incredible track. That track is so satisfying to listen to. It just makes you feel at home, you know? But you go to St. Arc and you start getting clues and you start figuring stuff out. And you're trying to figure out where Reen is. You're trying to figure out where Ash is. And you're trying to figure out where Muse is. And you've got the job to go deliver the stakes into the ground so that you can figure out where Reen is at, right? And this leads you eventually to Hummel and to Ash. And Ash is just like giving up. He's done. And the speech that Yuna gives to Ash is not word for word the speech that Reen gives to Eustace in Cold Steel 2, but it's so similar. You can just see Reen in Yuna, right? All that time teaching her absolutely had an effect. and she wins him over. And so then Ash is back with the party again, and you have to feel for Ash because he's been jerked around by this curse. He knows it. He wants to figure out what's going on. He wants to get revenge for Hummel, but he kind of already has, and things are a mess, right? But he's gonna do his best to make it right. And I think that Ash, let's talk about Ash. I think that Ash as a character, Ash Carbide, is absolutely incredible in this game. Whereas other members of New Class 7 still have that like deferential attitude to Old Class 7, even after Old Class 7 is like, hey, we're all Class 7 now. We are together. There is no difference between you and I. Ash is the one that believes it, right? Ash is the one that knows it. And he will riff with them. He will mess with them. He will call them out. And it's just really nice to see Ash get so comfortable with everybody and the effect that they've had on him. There's a really good moment with Ash in Michelin, if you take Ash to go do any of the events there, where he's just like, hey, I know what I got to do, but I also have to take care of this really annoying camp counselor teacher that won't stop taking on other people's problems. And it's just, yeah, Ash is so good. He is not a tsundere, right? Even though some people might say he is because the way he acts with Reen. But he absolutely will help Reen in any way he can. Not always for the fun stuff, right? He wants Reen to go do the fun stuff, but he will be there for Reen because Reen has been there for him. And the scene with him and the information broker where Miguel is just like holding him at gunpoint and Ash is like, you won't shoot. You're the one who saved me, aren't you? It's a really, really good scene. Every scene between Ash and Joshua is great here. And the moments where it's just like, yeah, I bet, if only I could tell Louvet or Karen that you're still alive too, that you made it out okay. It gets me, man. It gets me every time. Ash Carbide going, hey, Hammel's not my home. Raquel is my home. Let me tell you about my mom, right? The moment where they face off against the spirits, and it's like they're calling out Ash's name of Johan, and then he's like, let me tell you about my mom. You're not my mom. And it's just like, Ash. Oh, I love him. I feel so bad for him. Joshua in that scene is so rough too. Yeah, I love Ash Carbide. I think that they did an incredible job with him. And also, I made him very, very powerful combat-wise. So, But you get Ash on your team. You go back to Aaron Village. You get back into the St. Graal Labyrinth. You explore some more of that, right? And then next up is the Avon Hills. And you've got more... You're switching out members of Class 7, of original Class 7, as you go. I'll talk about all of them kind of in a big bunch once we get Reen back, because that's when you kind of have like unrestricted access to all of them. But little by little, you continue forward, and you eventually get to Raquel, and then eventually to Ulster, and this leads you to the Osgiliath Basin. And when you get down there, you have what is a really, really good scene between Musei and the rest of New Class 7, between Cedric and Fritz and Ada and Michael Irving. And like, as I'm talking about it right now, I'm having a hard time remembering that it's from the same game that this game is huge, right? But it's not overly long. It's not that it takes forever to get places. It is constantly moving. So the party is able to convince Musei that, hey, the fact that you're still here, the fact that you stood with us as much as you did, proves that you haven't given up yet. So don't give up now. Come with us. We'll find another way past Meal Mirage, right? And it's a really, really solid scene. It's really, really good. And you're able to convince her to join your team. And then you have to fight off Cedric and Fritz and Ada and everybody there. And you do eventually escape. And it's a really, really good scene. And that's what gives us back Musei. And I think Muse is better in this game than she was in 3 for me, mostly because although she is still flirty and having fun, now she's not afraid to let her real personality shine through of, hey, I am actually super concerned about what's going on. I desperately want us to be able to find another way. We need Instructor Reen for that. So let's go get him. Let's find him. And I think that when her original personality is shining through, Muse is so much more fun as a character to me. I really like Muse in this game. I didn't use her very often because I think that Altina and Emma, and to a point even like Duvali, do a better job at being like the supports arch user. Elliot as well, right? But being able to summon the Kestrel is really good. I didn't even mention how you go collect your Panzer Soldats again. But being able to use the Kestrel is pretty good. She's got some pretty interesting abilities, and her S-crafts look cool. So, Yusui's not bad at all. And character-wise, I really do like her. I think she's a lot better in this game for me. Just because, again, her focus here, she does still flirt, right? She still has a good time, but her focus here is on, we need to win this war, and we need to do it before the actual war starts, which I think is really cool. I like her a lot. So from there, we get into the final part of Act 1, right? Which is going back to Crossbell. And we get into Crossbell City, and we have all kinds of stuff going on there. And the big reveals here are that things are not going great in Crossbell. There's some bad stuff going on. The war is kicking into high gear. Conscription's going on, and very important people to us are getting conscripted. Arkansas is not doing well. Ilya's still out. Rishi is missing. So it's really just Sully and the rest of the team trying to keep things going. And we eventually get to Ursula Road and the medical college, where we find out that Emperor Ugent is alive. And we get a really good scene there. We get to go to Michelin for a little bit, which is pretty cool. And we meet the Hayworths. We have a good quest there. And then we go out to the Lake Elm wetlands, where we have to fight Sharon Kruger. And this is where, stuff had already been mentioned before, right? But this is where stuff really comes together of Sharon's back with the Society as Kruger. Things are not good. Things are bad. In fact, Franz Reinfeld is back as Black Alberic. We know that. And so Sharon has fully committed back to Ouroboros words, because her contract is completed with Irina Reinfeld. And it's a really good scene, I think, as Lecter and Campanella and Sharon are all basically like, hey, you can't win this fight. You don't have Reen. You're all divided. You're spread out. You can't win this. And you beat them, but immediately afterward, it's revealed that Rufus Alberea has claimed the Auric Knight, El Prado. And that comes back so good later, right? Such a good scene later on. But how could you possibly win this fight, right? And he leaves. He fights you and then goes, this was good practice, and leaves. Because it's just, again, telling you, you can't win. You're completely overwhelmed. Everything is falling apart, right? And so then you get to take Kia and Ren back with you to try and figure out where Reen is at. And there's this really, really good scene of Roselia being like, well, your stuff's not better than my stuff. I love Roselia. She's great. I think she's really solid. And you can go explore the last part of the Grawl Labyrinth as well. There's some good stuff that happens there. But then you go into the Black Workshop. And this is when, I think, don't get me wrong, I think the first half of Cold Steel 4 is really good, right? This is when the game changes. Because all of a sudden it goes, hey, pick out some teams. Team A, the boys. Team B, the girls. Let's go. And then you get your third team, which is, I should mention throughout the whole thing, obviously we've had these cuts to Reen, and he hasn't been in control of himself because he's become the sacrifice. The curse has hold of him. Team C is Reen and Celine and Crow and Duvali. And Reen is a berserker at this point. You can control him, but he's not. He can't even say his own name, right? And Celine has become a cat girl to help you, which is like, sure, yeah, why not? I mean, she's a magical familiar. Why wouldn't she have a human form? And her crafts are actually pretty good, and her orders are actually pretty good too. But you go forward with this team, right? As Crow and Duvali do not seem happy about this, but they also don't want to just leave you to run amok. So they're helping you fight your way through the Black Workshop, and you finally get to this point where you have to face down Reen, right? And you have your party, and you're trying to get through to him, and man, it just the scene where you win Reen back over, and then like everybody that's connected to Reen reaches out and is able to because again, I want to specify this because it's going to come up later too. Some people say it's power of friendship, right? But we've seen so far how bonds are literal power in the series because of the Arcus units, and then also how perception is reality, in that if something like an area becomes captured by Erebonia, then it becomes, as soon as it becomes captured, as soon as everybody accepts it's a part of Erebonia now, the curse can take hold there. In that same way, the people that are important to Reen, that have helped him carry his load and have helped be a part of his life, are then able to call out to him, basically, and together restore his sanity. And in that, you get Valimar and Millium. Valimar can't speak anymore, but Millium's there, and she can talk, and I broke, and they bring Reen back. And then you have to fight Red Rosswise, which we'll talk about. You have to fight Copper Georg. You have to fight McBurn, Innes, and Enea. You have to fight Osborne and Arianrode. This is a tough fight. This is a tough chapter for boss battles wise, right? Just you have all these different fights over the course of these different routes. You have to fight Reen himself, and then you fight I say Reen, right? It's the curse, the sacrifice, and then you fight Osborne and Arianrode, and you get a really, really cool scene of the Partitioner, Thomas Lysander, and Roselia opening up a path for a Merkaba to just like drive in and pick you up, and it's so cool. This Fragments is a really, really good chapter, and it's at this point that I feel like we should talk about everybody else, right? Because the very next thing that you do is you go to try basically to do the first of the rivalries, right? Your goal is to go fight Crow and win and take part in the rivalry, because Crow refuses to just go with you. You have to go fight him first. So let's talk Old Class 7. Elliot, I think, is really good in this game. I think that Elliot's very solid. I like him a lot. I think that he doesn't get to do a lot story-wise, but the moments that he gets are really good. The stuff with Arkanseel, the stuff with the Altina singing while he plays so that they can get into Dukayan's Manor. There's a lot of really good little moments with Elliot, including when you go to talk to Olaf the Craig the Red, not Olaf. Yeah, Olaf Craig. That's his name. I'm not insane. I'm just insane. There's some really good stuff there with him, and I think that Elliot is really good in this game as well. He doesn't grow really in this game, but he's kind of already grown, you know? You got that big moment with him in 3 where he's like, well, if the government won't help us, then we'll just fight them. And it's like, whoa, Elliot, you said that? Heck yeah. So yeah, Elliot's just, he's even better in this game. Elisa, I think, is really good here. I think that the stuff with Sharon, the stuff with Tio, the stuff with Tita, the stuff with Irina, and finally, of course, the stuff with Franz Reinfeld is all very, very good. I think that she has some of my favorite connections in the series, and so the little moments you get with her, with Tio and Tita are both really, really good. And then the big moment with her and Sharon is very, very good, where she's just like, hey, I'll come get you no matter how many times it takes. Your family. And just the dynamic where you have that and you compare that to the stuff with her and Franz Reinfeld, and how she's, even at the end when she's like, I'm going to choose to believe that he's still dead, even at the end, she still can't bring herself to not care when Franz Reinfeld calls out to them. And I think that's really good. I really like Elisa in this game. I never romanced Elisa, right? I never wanted to romance Elisa. This is the first game where I kind of thought it was a good idea, right? For me. I think that obviously some people love Elisa. She just wasn't my favorite, but this is the first game where I think she really, really stood apart from the others and had her own very obvious goal that aligned with everybody else's, but wasn't just save the world, right? And speaking of that, Laura also has one of those. It's, we need to save everybody, but also I want to... Oh, and I forgot a huge thing about Elliot that I want to talk about too. Laura is like, I want to become the best that I can be, which has kind of always been Laura's thing, right? But also, with the loss of Victor S. Arcade, as far as she knows, it kind of falls to her, right? To be the Radiant Blade Master. And it's a lot of pressure. And I think that Laura in this game, despite having a different voice actress, is more than able to pull that off. I think she does a great job. Her interactions with Duvali are really good. Her interactions with Leanne Sandlot are incredible. I really, really like Laura in this game. The thing that I forgot to mention about Elliot real quick is that I think Elliot's goal of like, hey, I'm gonna bring smiles back to people. I'm gonna play this music. I'm gonna make sure people remember that there is still joy. That's really good. I like Elliot a lot. I did romance Laura. I should specify that. If you could have romanced Duvali, I would have. Sorry, Laura. But I did romance Laura, and I thought it was pretty good. I do think that for like 4 games of build-up for bonding events and romance, the one scene that you get's kind of not worth it. I mean, obviously you do it anyway, right? Because you want those scenes. And you're going to romance somebody, so like pick somebody. But I thought the scene was good, but I didn't get any like special scene in the credits or anything. It just was, it was a cool scene and that was it. Yeah, it was good. I don't think it was as good as like Azure or even Zero's like bonding event scene. I think was better, but it's not bad. I think the bonding events themselves were better than the final scenes for everybody, basically, but it wasn't bad. Fee gets a ton of work here. Fee doesn't really have much more room to grow in this game, right? She's already grown a lot, but she still grows even more. And the big reason is because of Rutger Flossel. And it's the moment where he loses the rivalry and chooses not to ally, right? He chooses to die. And he's just like, yeah, no, I've ran my course already. I did my time. I've done it. It's time to bow out. And then he's like, hey, Fee, you did good. And it's just this moment of like, and I took a line down here because I love it. And it's, you put a heart in this bloodthirsty mongrel's chest. And I broke again. And then in the scene later where you get to go out there and you get to like smoke cigars at his grave because he liked smoking cigars. It's a really good scene. And I just think that Fee did incredible in this game. Fee is so good in this game. I love Fee in this game. I think Gaius in this game is really good. I think that Gaius Warzel, the newest Dominion, right? He's really good in this game. I think that especially during the stuff with McBurn, towards the end, where McBurn reveals the stuff about the divergent laws, and Gaius is like, "Yeah, I hate to tell you like this, but I knew about all this stuff. We don't have answers. And it's really, I wish I didn't have to hide it from you, and I wish I could talk about it, and I wish I could understand, and I wish I could spread it." And it's like, you can see how torn he is, you know? You also have, like, the pressure on him to be a good Dominion, to protect other people, while also having to try and stay true to his heritage as a warrior from Nord. And I think the scenes with him and Bardius are really, really good. I like Gaius a lot in this game. Gaius is really, really good. And you would not have made it to the end without Gaius. So, you know. Also, I think it's really cool that you wind up with the Dominion in your party in all 3 arcs. I like that. I just think that's a nice touch. And it's a different Dominion each time. And we had Thomas Lysander. We'll talk about him in a minute. Machias is really good in this game. Machias has 2 of my favorite moments in this game, which is where, at one point, Machias goes... Got it pulled up over here. Machias is like facing a literal demon from Gehenna. And he turns around and goes, "Why are you, all of you Ouroboros people so crazy?" It's like, Machias, you're fighting a demon, bro. And she's like, "Yeah, no, just there's a shotgun aimed at this demon. Here we go." Yeah, I think it's really good. I like Machias a lot in this game. I think that the other big one that stands out for me is there's a side quest where somebody else from the Inspectorate is crushing royals, nobles, just for the fun of it, right? He's putting, because the curse has gotten a hold of him. And it winds up being Machias's older sister's, or cousin? I think it was sister. Loved one, right? It's her ex-fiance. And Machias basically has this moment where he's like, "Yeah, those people that you're trying to hurt are nobles. But I believe in the law. If we really want to change the world, we have to do it by the book." And it's just this moment of like, Machias was the one that would talk bad about nobles all day long, but now he will defend them because he's had his arc. He recognized it doesn't matter, noble or commoner. It doesn't matter. What matters is that everybody needs to be protected. And it just, I love it. I love Machias in this game. Randy calls him Macchiato. There's a really good moment where Machias tries to have normal talk with Crow that is just really, really solid. Machias in this game is incredible. And there's like another little thing. I'm going to get to Eustace in just a second because Eustace is next. But Machias and Eustace fought for so long, right? I expected them to be the two that were always like in the background fighting throughout the entire series. But in 4, where Eustace is mourning and grieving for most of the game, Machias is his biggest supporter. And it just, man, it got me. Just seeing like Machias would go, "Eustace," or would try and tell a joke to bring the mood up for Eustace, or would remind Eustace that he's there. And it got me, man. Machias was there for Eustace. Machias is such a bro. Even to the point of like accusing his own dad of working for the government and working for Osborne, right? Machias is so good in this game. I love Machias in 4. And then we have Eustace Alborea. And Eustace, like, of all the people in this game, Eustace is the one that is clearly mourning the hardest, right? People are sad for Reen when he's missing. Laura's sad for her dad. People are sad about Tuval. Alfin and the Empress, and even to a point Cedric, are all really upset about Olivert, right? You have moments where Estelle and Joshua and Tita and Agate all make reference to Olivier, and Lloyd and Randy and Tio and Ellie, they all make references to Olivert, right? And they're all sad. But Eustace is mourning. he's got her hat, and he's holding on to her hat, and he doesn't know what to do with it. And he tries to give it to Altina, and Altina's like, no, you keep it. She would have wanted you to have it. And Eustace is just like, yeah. Yeah, okay. And it broke my heart every time I saw it. I just wanted Eustace to be happy. And it works out in the end, but we'll get there. Because I think that Eustace, man, of everybody, I think he's got it the worst, right? His dad is a scumbag. His brother is a scumbag, though I love Rufus Alborea. All the other noble families are struggling. He's got all this pressure on him, and now he's lost Millium. And he's just a wreck. And I really like Eustace in this game. There's a really powerful moment between Eustace and Rufus towards the end that is really, really good. We can go ahead and talk about Millium now. I mean, we're in all spoilers. I've already brought up stuff from Rufus towards the end of the game. I really liked Millium in this game. I think that Millium Orion is a great character in this game. Millium is the character from, like, and I mentioned this in the Cold Steel 3 review. Millium is the character from Cold Steel 1 and 2 that maybe meant the least to me of all of Class 7. Don't get me wrong. I liked her, but she was my least favorite out of all of them, right? Maybe Elisa and then Millium. But, or Millium, you know what I mean. Elisa at the bottom. But, I really liked Millium in 3. I think that Millium had some really fun moments in 3. And don't get me wrong, she had some fun moments in the previous games too. But then the moment at the end is really, really heartbreaking. And when you get into 4, and she's trapped in that sword, but she's still Millium. She's still so optimistic, right? She's desperately trying to be that light of positivity that she has always been. And Millium just like skyrockets for me. Because it's not that she's ignoring her situation. She's obviously in a very bad situation. But she thought she was going to die. And she is kind of dead. But she can still think and feel. And yeah, they can't hear her at first. But she's still there. And that's so much more than she thought she would have, you know? And so then later on, when she's able to manifest, thanks to Leanne Sandlot, she gets to spend time with Eustace and with Altina. And it's just beautiful the way that she's just upbeat and peppy and there for Reen and there for Altina and there for Eustace and everybody else. And she even tells them, like, hey, we got to go put a stop to everything going on. We got to stop Gramps. We got to stop Claire. We got to help these people, you know? We got to stop Lecter. And it just, Millium, again, just jumped up the charts for me character-wise. I absolutely adore Millium in this game, and I think she is so good. Then let's talk about Crow. I guess we need to talk about Sarah, too. There's so many people to talk about, man. Let's talk about Crow. Crow Armbrust already was one of my favorite characters in Cold Steel, one of my favorite characters in the entire series, right? I mentioned how I wasn't upset that they had brought him back in 3, because we got to see the characters mourn for him, much in the way we get to see Eustace mourn for Millium in 3, right? Or in 4. So when Crow comes back, it's under the premise of it being temporary. Everybody knows it, right? And you have this really powerful moment where they beat him, and Crow is vanishing away, and he's like, can I get a smile this time instead? Because it's like, hey, it's time to go, you know? And then Reen is just like, are you really just going to take the easy way out? Now of all times when we need you the most? Which is not what Reen would have done before. Before, Reen wept and was upset and was crying out and angry. And this time he's still angry, but he's not angry that Crow's dying. He's angry that Crow is giving up. And he's just like, no. You're not going to get to do this to us again. You're not going to get to leave us again. You're not going to get to take the easy way out. We're in a bunch of trouble right now, and we need you, so you're stuck with us. And he forces Crow back. He gives the power back, and Crow becomes subservient. And I love Crow Armbrust, so I was very excited to get him back in my party. He's an incredible party member. And he's, in a lot of ways, Green's best friend. There are so many references from then on to, like, hey, Crow's not going to get to be here forever, right? Crow's going to have to leave. But there's just a moment where he goes, then I'll be with you to the very last second, Green. And it's just like, yeah, Crow is bro. He is here. He is not going to let you down. He is with you no matter what. And you also get Duvalie. And I want to finish talking about Crow real quick because there's a really great side quest with Stark, right? Where you have to play against Crow in a game of Vantage Masters, and if you win, he makes Crow and Reed promise to go eat food with him back in Jirai one day after all this is over. And Crow is like, I can't promise that. And Green is like, yeah, I don't even know if I can promise that. And Stark is like, promise me. You made a bet. And so then they have to because, Stark believes they'll make it out of this. And you get just, man, that moment at the end where Crow is just like, yeah, I'm with you. You're going to go blow yourself up? All right, I'm coming with you. I'm bound to your fate anyway. I'm not going to let you do this alone. And it's like, yeah, Crow is bro, man. He's so good. I love Crow Armbrust. And you also get Duvalie. And Duvalie is not a character that I ever thought would join my party, right? But I love Duvalie. I adore Duvalie. Duvalie is such a great character. She's one of my absolute favorites in the series already. Just because that moment where she's like, then I won't tell you. But Duvalie has grown so much over these games. And it's the moment where she goes, hey, I can't be with Ouroboros anymore. I can't serve you knowing what we're doing to the world. I need to find out why. And you won't tell me if I work for you. So I need to fight you so I can prove it. And from that point on, she's with you. And it is so cool. I love Duvalie's growth as a character. Just those moments of like, hey, yeah, I will fight you if I have to. Because fighting you means that I get to know the truth. And just, I love her. I love her so much. Duvalie is such a great character. I think that the only thing that would have made me, like, because Duvalie's so good. I wish I could romance Duvalie. I really do. Don't get me wrong. Green's harem is too big already, but I wish I could romance Duvalie. Just because, again, I love her so much. She's such a great character. Also, really, really solid unit. She was in my party the entire game, pretty much. I like Duvalie a lot. I guess we should talk about Sarah real quick, too. I know that I said I wasn't going to worry about how long we're going, so we're going to talk about Sarah. Sarah Valentine, still a great character. We get to have the resolution finally for stuff with her dad. It's really good. We also get an incredible line from her with George, which we'll get into George in a little bit. But just the moment where she says, it doesn't matter that I did it for the sake of my home. A life is still a life. And that weight stays with you forever. And it's just such a powerful line from Sarah. I really like Sarah in this game. There's also a really funny moment towards the end where she says Reen's speech from 2 almost word for word and thinks she's being original, and the whole class just gets to laugh at her about it and have a good time. And it just brought a little bit of levity to like a really serious moment that I liked. No, I like Sarah a lot. So you fight Crow, you get him on your side, you get Duvalie on your side, you get to go do a bunch of cool stuff. And this is the first time really that you have access to go doing the special monsters. They're like optional super bosses almost. And when you beat them, they drop a lost art quartz, and you've had those in the game before. I didn't know this at the time, but you have to beat these to get the true ending. So instead, I was just beating them to get the quartz because they're really good quartz. But they're good. You should fight them. They're very strong. And And yeah, that's pretty much this chapter, right? The big goal is to get Crow and to get everything going on there. There are other things you can do. You can go do some side quests everywhere, but eventually it's going to lead you to Ordis. It's going to lead you to the Ordis Waterway, and it's going to lead you into fighting some of the rank and file, and eventually Claire and Red Rosswise in an attempt to rescue Princess Alphen. And I think this chapter is really good. I like this whole section a lot. I don't like the stuff with Red Rosswise very much. And mostly it's because I don't know. How do I word this nicely? I don't like Angelica at all. And I feel like somebody on the team really likes Angelica. And so Crow coming back is great. I'm not even upset that Angelica comes back per se. But you have this whole thing about how she's Red Rosswise. She still has all her memories, but she's doing things the wrong way. And, you know, you gotta fight her. And then her mask just breaks, and then she's back in control. And it's nothing, basically. It's like, yep, now we got Angelica back. And then immediately afterwards, she just immediately goes back to trying to molest everybody. And I don't think it would bother me so much if at some point somebody tried to talk to her and was like, hey, this is not cool. You should not be doing this. And I think where it really stands out for me is when you're on the Pantagruel, and there's like, because you're talking to a bunch of different people, right? A bunch of things are going on. There's just a moment where she's alone with Kia and Ren. And it's just like, I don't want her around them. Get her away from them. Don't let her touch them, please. Leave those children alone, Angelica, please. And yeah, I've said it before. I don't like Angelica at all, really. I wish that I could, but I just don't. And so the more that she is brought into the forefront of the story, the more frustrated I get with her behavior. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a prude. I don't care when she wants to feel up the class. She shouldn't do that, but I'm not gonna like throw a fit about it because they're adults. Whatever. I don't like it. You shouldn't do it, but it's a video game. I'm not gonna throw a fit for this one character doing it. But when there's children, man, I don't like Angelica at all. Then you go and you have to fight Nightheart and General Craig to be able to get Elise back. Notice that that's all I have to say about Angelica. I just really don't like her. And you do so. You get them back. You have a pretty good fight there. It's pretty nice, you know. I think that's a fun battle. You get into some fun side quests, and you get through some more. I'm skipping a bunch of little things, not because I don't want to talk about them, and not because I'm worried about time, but just because there's not really much to say about them, right? You interact with a bunch of other characters, and the side quests are all good. I think they're all worth doing, but there's not a lot. There are bigger things I want to talk about, you know? But you eventually lead up to this fight to go retake the branch campus. And it is a really cool sequence of going building to building, fighting against students and archaisms, getting keys that allow you to go to other parts of the building. It is really fun. I thought this part was really interesting. And you find out the truth about the Zauber Sodats. You work against all that. You fight Mary and Makarov. And it's just really cool. I liked this whole section a lot. As you eventually get down to the bottom of Einhell Keep to be able to fight against Instructor Michael Irving, Ada, and Fritz. And after this is where you start to see the turn in Ada and Fritz. And of course, Major Michael is just doing everything he needs to right now for the sake of his plan. But I found that all of this stuff was really fun. I liked it a lot, you know? It's good stuff. And you finish off Act 2 with the Pantagruel operation, with everything going on there, with the big go meet everybody and all the characters reconvene together. And when I say all, I mean not all, because Wazy and Noel and Arios McLean and Zen and Risha, Kevin Graham are not there. And sorry to tell you, they're not going to be there for the entire game, which is kind of a disappointment to me. However, they do get to show up in one scene later. Although Colonel Richard doesn't, and Major Sid doesn't. And I'm just saying they could have. You know? Colonel Richard could have shown up here. That might have been nice. But either way, he's not Colonel anymore. Alan Richard could have showed up. But you eventually, you have everybody meets up again, and you have, like, it's kind of a long chapter, but it's a good one, right? As you get to spend all these different conversations with everybody. It's where Ash and Joshua get to talk. It's where Ash decides to try and talk about Tita's relationship with Agate to get the discussion off of him and Hummel. You get Agate brings up Ravenu. You get all of these fun little moments with all these different characters as Operation Meal Mirage is discussed, and they get into the real heart of what Meal Mirage is, right? You also get a really cool scene where Reen shakes hands with Estelle Lloyd, where Tita, and I'll get back to the handshake thing in a minute, because there's something really cool about that scene. But Tita hugs Estelle and Ren, and is so happy, and I got really emotional at that scene, I won't lie. Randy and Lloyd do the fist bump, because now Randy can finally relax. Lloyd is in front of him again. Ellie's there. Tio's there. They're back together. Randy can finally relax. And it got me too. And then Princess Claudia walks up, and I was just like, ah! So, the moment with Reen, he shakes Estelle's hand. Everything's fine, right? He goes to shake Lloyd's hand, and he's like, I'm not good enough to shake this hand. After what I did, after how I attacked you and fought you, how can I shake this hand? And Lloyd is like, hey, it doesn't matter where we're from. We're all in this together now. You saved some of my people. We got this. And just shakes his hand. And it got me so good. I love all these characters, man, except for Angelica. I love all of these characters except for Angelica. So it really meant a lot to me when they're all in one room together, you know? And then after a bunch of really cool scenes where everybody's discussing things, and you get to have Josette Capua poking fun at Estelle for the fact that her relationship with Joshua hasn't advanced really any further, or has it, right? Oh, there's some fun little dynamic there. But you get to see that Josette has, like, finally moved on, you know? She's able to move forward in her life. There's so many good scenes like that in here, where just little moments of everybody talking together. You get to talk to Cassius Bright about the 8 Leaves One Blade School and everything there, and it's a very good sequence, which is then overshadowed by the sequence that follows, where you have to fight your way up to the top of the Pantagruel, and then Cedric's there, and Rutger Klossel is there, Copper Georg is there, and Maribel's there, and the Stahlritter's there, and Zephyr's there, and Lecter's there, and then my boy shows up. And we gotta talk about my boy, Prince Olivert, Olivier Lindheim, because he's not dead. He is, in fact, alive. And he has a sick eye patch. And it just, like, he shows up. He's got Shara with him. So Vol is on tap. He's okay. Victor Arcade lost an arm. Olivier lost an eye. You find out they're still alive because of George, because George couldn't commit to it. And he just comes screaming in the Courageous 2, just ready to save the day. And I can see again where some people might be upset that another character that was dead is actually alive. But I think that not only is Olivier my favorite character in the series, and I've said it many times, I absolutely adore this character, but he paid for it, right? He's got the eye patch. He's not as strong as he was before. He was a marksman in a lot of ways, and now he's lost an eye. And I just think that it's really good, man. That he's okay. I don't care, because he's okay. And Cher's there with him, and we get a lot of cool stuff that happens with them, and they get married at the end, and it's just, Olivia's okay, man. And so I'm fine with it. And he gets to still just be Olivier, and it's great. I love the eye patch, by the way. He looks incredible. But I do kind of wish he got to join your party. But for the most part, he is constrained to captain of the ship. With the in-lore reason being that he has been injured pretty badly, which is true. So I'm not upset about it. But I do think it would have been cool to get to just have him hanging out. Though you get to use his order, which is really good. No, I'm so happy he's alive. And I love it. I love it so much. Yeah, Olivier is great. And then you get the Courageous 2. And this is where, in Act 3, the game really opens up, right? Because before this, you had some places you could go and you could teleport. But now you have this airship, and you can go pretty much anywhere. There's still a couple places that are held off for you. But you can go pretty much anywhere. And you have side quests that pop up. You have stuff with Maya and her dad that are really good. You have stuff with Hugo Kleist, and winning him back over from the curse and Ouroboros, or Osborne, right? The Ironbloods. And getting him back on your team is really, really good. You have Becky and everything going on there. You have stuff with Beryl that pops up that's really interesting. And you have Lindy, and you have Mint, and you have Vivi, and Dorothy, and it feels like, hey, all of Thor's is with you, right? Except for Alan. We'll get to Alan. And you can go around and give stuff to Imelda, and give stuff to Adel, and give stuff to Margarita. You meet up with Vincent and Ferris, and you have Emily and Teresia, and you just Kenneth Lake Lord, and you have all of these characters that have slowly built up for you, right? Over the course of these 4 games from Thor's, that are now a part of your main group and are just really, really cool. It's good to have everybody together. New branch campus, old Thor's campus, main campus, regular main campus for new. Heck yeah, we're all in this together. Let's go. We got to stop Osborne. And it's everything builds up together in a really cool way. And I really, really like it. I think this is my favorite airship that we've gotten yet, just because of that, right? Even Jingo's here, and it's just like, yeah, we got everybody. You have the sanctuaries, right? Get into the sanctuaries, and you fight, in the first one, you fight the Luna Sanctuary, you fight Roselia. You also fight Principal Le Guin, but you fight Roselia, and she reveals that she is actually a divine beast, or a copy of a divine beast. She's a familiar that became a copy of the divine beast. And then you get to see into the well, and you get to see the truth of everything. You get to see, and I have a couple lines here. You get to see Osborne, and you get to see what happened with Dreichels, and you find out that Osborne is the reincarnation of Emperor Dreichels. You also get to see Leanne and her immortality. You get to see what happened with Franz Reinford. You get a big lore dump, right? And the moment that we got to see the curse, I went from going like, well, I don't know about this curse thing, to going, oh, I love this. because it is just this creature, sentience, like a data core given form and sentience, and it is vile, and it is cruel, and it is aberrant, and it is ethereal, and it is just this ball of eyes and teeth. It's eldritch, right? And it's just going, give it to me. And I love it. And it's the truth of what Ishmelga is, right? And you find out that everything that has come going on in Erebonia is because of Ishmelga. Ishmelga is trying to regain form. And I have seen some people in the comments for 3 being like, I don't like this curse stuff. I wish that it was something else. But there's really no difference between this and the Liber Arc and the Azure Tree, because it's all caused by mankind not being able to handle Septarians, right? The Liber Arc was because Weissman was trying to get a hold of the Septarian. Azure Tree is because the Croix family was trying to get a hold of the Septarian. In this case, Curse is because the Septarians of Earth and Fire battled each other and became the Septarian of Steel, and that led to even more conflict. It all ties back into mankind cannot be trusted with these crazy powers, and it led to this curse. And you get this really, really good scene where Osborn, it humanizes him in a way, right? Because all series he has been this overwhelming force, this being that when he walks in a room, everyone in the room is scared, right? It humanizes him to where he's going, take my body, take my soul, do what you will, just let my son live. And so Ishmelga does. It takes over him. And this Osborn that we've seen that is so cruel and so calculating, this is the true potency, the true power of this man if his scruples were gone. Because Ishmelga has eroded them away. Much in the way that Franz Reinfeld, Black Alberic, is the genius without the scruples. Although, there is a cost. We see that with Black Alberic and how he's not as smart as Franz Reinfeld. In that same way, Gileath Osborn can't be as strong or as bold or even as commandeering, and that's not the right word, but as focused in some ways as Reen is, because of the support that he has. We see that also with Rufus and with Cedric in a way that I think is really cool. Again, the power of bonds, right? It's one of my favorite tropes, but if Osborn had those, or if he'd utilized the one that he had, I think that things would have been different for him, But the curse eroded his need to do that. They weren't bonds, they were tools. Even the people that looked up to him were just tools at the end of the day, because of Ishmelga. And it really hammers home that things could have been different. And the Osborn that you hear Lecter and Claire and Milliam talk about is the Osborn from the early days before the curse had fully taken him, And it just, yeah. It also makes perfect sense why the gnomes suddenly turned to work with Osborn, because of Ishmelga, which they were already bound to. And it's very good. It humanizes him in such a way. I love it. And of course, you find out later that Osborn's plan was to take it all on to himself and then die to end it. And it just, man. So from there, again, you kind of have control at this point, right? You can go wherever you want. You have that really good side quest with Maya that I mentioned. You have Valerie's side quest. You have all these little side quests to help different people. You still have all of the lost cryptids that you need to go beat, right? So little by little, you do those. You do the quest for Kayla to try and help her brother. It's a very good quest. I liked that a lot. I really want to know more of what's going on the Calvern side, and I hope that we get to spend some time with her and her brother in Kuro. I don't know if we will or not, but I hope so. Then we get into the next big section, which is hey, go to the Gargantua, fight your way through to take down the shield generator to be able to free up the sanctuary so you can go fight Rutger Clausel and fight a rivalry. And in here is where you finally face down Sharon, and you face down Copper Georg, and you basically face down Black Alberic, right? Because he pops up. And Elisa is able to talk to Sharon and her mother and try to figure out what's going on. And they talk to Professor Schmidt, and you find out that Irina and Schmidt were both doing this so they could find out what's going on with the people they care about. Schmidt will hide it. He'll pretend that he doesn't, but he cares about both George and Franz Reinfeld. And Irina obviously loves Franz Reinfeld, but Black Alberic is not Franz Reinfeld. And there's a moment where you've won the fight, and you've beaten Sharon, and you've beaten Copper Georg, and Black Alberic summons this giant dragon, Leviathan, this dragon mech made out of organic material that in a lot of ways kind of looks like the dark dragon that Louve bonded with. But it goes to strike, and Georg and Sharon stop it. Because even despite everything, they still won't let their friends get hurt. And Alberic, throws a fit. And then you beat the Leviathan, and it breaks the shield generator, and you win the fight, and Sharon and Irina have a moment with Elisa, and Irina's basically like, I made that promise because I thought he might come back. This man is not the man that I love. This is someone else. You're still Sharon Kruger. And Sharon's like, yes, please. And then basically you have that moment with Sarah where she's like, hey, it doesn't matter what you've done before. You're going to carry that forever, but we need your help right now. So put your own selfishness aside and help us. And George is like, okay. And it's not easy for them to do, but they do it, right? You go to the Draco Sanctuary, and you fight Rutger Clausel. You have to fight Zeno and Leo first, of course. But you go fight them. You fight Rutger, and then you fight him in Zector. You win the fight, and that is when he has that moment with Fee, where he's like, hey, you put a heart in this beast chest. And it's really good, and it got me, and I liked it a lot. It was very, very good. And following that, of course, you have more bonding events that you can do, more quests that you can do. But it all leads up to this moment where you're back, you're back in Crossbell, and you're doing cool stuff, and you're fighting your way through, and you have to fight in Orcus Tower. You have to fight Victor Arcade and McBurn. And I didn't even mention how Victor Arcade was working for the bad guys. There's so much to talk about, man. But it's because the curse has taken hold of him. But because his will is so strong, he can still be Victor Arcade despite it. And you fight both of them. And when you win, Victor Arcade is also freed and then comes back to your side. And it's super cool. But he's still lost an arm, so he's got to be a little bit more careful, But you also get to see Zex Vander and Mueller Vander and Oriel Vander. And they're all three there. And they're super cool. And it was great to get to see Mueller again. And you can go and try to talk to the Emperor again. And you get some really cool stuff there. But eventually you get to fighting in the Stella Sanctuary. And because there was another barrier, that's why I had to go to Orcus Tower. I forgot to mention that. And you fight against Inea and Ines, and you eventually fight the Steel Maiden herself, Leanne Sandlot, Arian Road, the Steel Maiden, and you get a really cool scene between her and the Stall Ritter, where she says, sometimes parents must lie to their children. And it just, because it turns out the only reason why she stayed alive all this time is so that she can free Dreichels of the curse of Ishmelga, whether by her hand or by someone else's. And it's just, it's so good, man. You have all these people that have been like, you knew that Leanne wasn't evil, so I saw this coming in a way, but I didn't expect just how deep it ran, right? But it did. You know, it's really potent. This, hey, I only went along with all of this time, so that I could free the man that I love. And then she gets stabbed in the back by Rufus Albarella. Because you convince her. She's going to be on your side. You convince her to become an ally, just like Crow. And Rufus Albarella stabs her in the back. And it just... Oh, man. We're going to talk about Rufus in a minute. Because following that, you go to Eventide, which is your last real chapter to do bonding events and stuff like that. And it's your chance to be able to spend some time with your characters. And it's also where you will spend your tickets to be able to spend time with the character that you have decided to pair up with. There is a side quest here that is one of my favorite side quests in this game, which is where you have a drinking contest. And Duvalie gets absolutely like hammered. She gets completely drunk, can't hold on to her alcohol, and I guess she doesn't puke, but she's just like falling asleep at the table, and I loved it. It's so much fun. But you get to spend these tickets, right? You get to spend time with everybody. And, you know, Laura's got a really good scene, and you get to spend time with Duvalie and with Crow, and there's a little extra special scene if you've maxed out the bond for everybody where they'll give you an item. And I think this is a really good chapter too. There's so much fun stuff to do in here. So many little moments. Millium and Eustace hanging out, and you can light sparklers with them both. Getting to, you know, hey, if you take Crow up in the Ferris wheel, then he's like, looks a little odd, the two of us up here, huh? And it's like, yeah. I love you, Crow. But yeah, no, it's so much fun to be had with all these characters. Each of their scenes are really good. I reloaded a couple times to see some of the other ones, you know. I think they're all really, really good. You also get some other good side scenes here, like Annabelle tries to confess to Kenneth Lake Lord and struggles with it. You can talk to General Wallace and General Aurelia, and Reen is like, what's going on between the two of them, though? That's the big question I've had. You can run into Alan, or Bridget at least, and she's very worried about Alan. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here, right? You also get two of my favorite scenes in this whole game. You get Anton gets to have a scene with Sharon. All game long, you've been running into Anton, and you've been talking about how he's been trading letters with Sharon, and Rena's like, I don't think that's going to work out, man. And Anton gets to have a scene with Sharon, and it's incredible. It's so good because he's basically like, hey, I don't care what you had to go through before. It doesn't matter to me because I believe in you. Whether you care about me or not, I believe in you. I believe you can do this, Sharon. And it's exactly the push that she needs. And it's a really sweet moment. And then you get the scene with Claire. Reen, Claire, and Milliam are hanging out in the Lakelands. And she's like, you know, how do you know I won't just shoot you? And he drops the sword and goes, basically, because you won't. And it just, oh, I love Claire. I love Claire so much. And I think that her friendship / relationship with Reen is really, really good. And this game only makes it better. Because Claire and Lecter are our gaze into the Ironbloods, right? They are our enemy that is not our enemy. And it's been interesting all game to have Claire or Lecter show up and be like, no, it's fine. I won't pursue you this time, but next time. Or Lecter going, yeah, I'll help you out this one time, but only because our interests align, you know? And to have, hey, we were friends at one point, and maybe we still are, but also we're diametrically opposed. And I really like it. I think it's really good. I like it a lot. And then you get one final chapter for side content, right? You get one final chance to do any side content that's still left, to go back and fight all of the large cryptids, the super bosses if you haven't yet. You have side quests that have like Stark side quests that I mentioned earlier. You have the Hommel stuff that I mentioned earlier. There's Black Sumerian ore all over the place that you can go pick up. You can go take pictures of the salt pails that I haven't even mentioned yet. Salt pails show up because the Imperial Palace shows up. Oh, there's so much to talk about, man. Yeah, there's a bunch of cool side quests you can do. The big one to me, I mean, obviously the one where Ellie's mom gets captured and you need to go save her. The stuff with Hommel is really good. But the big one to me is about Alan. And it's the moment where you go to save Alan. Because the curse is completely taken over for him. And it fulfills that side quest story from way back in Cold Steel 1, where Alan and Bridget were fighting because she's a noble, he's a commoner, and she doesn't care, and he does. And from all the way back then, that's what I love about the Trail series, man. It has come to this point of he has given completely into the curse because he believes he has to be a hero for her family to recognize him because he's not a noble. We're well past the point where that should matter, right? There's a war on the horizon, but the curse has gripped him and twisted him where he believes that's what's important. And you have to stop him with a bunch of people from Class 7, right? And you don't get to see Loggins and Friedel and some of the others, but they get mentioned. But you have Kenneth Lakelord, you have Patrick Higharms, you have all of these great characters that have come to mean something to you, right? Over the course of these 4 games that are just like, hey, Alan, we don't care if you're noble or not. We just really like you. The fact that you were always willing to get back up again, the fact that you always were willing to be dedicated to what you were doing, the fact that you worked harder than all the rest of us. We just like you, Alan. And it finally gets through to him that it's okay for him to just be himself, which is one of the toughest things people can choose to do, right? And it really hit home for me. I really, really liked it. We haven't even gotten into the finale, and I'm already so emotional. Also, Kenneth and Annabelle officially become an item, which is like, heck yeah. I've been invested in that romance since Cold Steel 2. So, you go up to the top of Stargazer's Tower. You fight the final one of the Lost Ones. You fight Loa Phantasma. I guess not the final one because there's the other one for Taval that you're going to have to go do in just a second. But if you've done all the other side quests, you get to do a special quest for Taval where you go and you fight the Holy Beast of Earth, basically. And by doing so, you unlock the ability to have the true ending. And then you go into the final dungeon. And this whole sequence is split up into teams. Each team is going to attack a salt pail because the salt pails control the shield that the Imperial Palace, the Imperial Fortress, has. And so you have to play as each of the teams, and you get to the final boss of the salt pail for each of the teams, and then you switch to another team. And then when you've done that for all of them, you have 5 boss battles back to back. And it's really cool. And each of the teams has their own dialogue in there that's really fun and really interesting. It is a lot of fun to have all of these characters at your disposal and them hanging out and talking to each other. But you also get a really cool cutscene that's like, hey, it's not just us. You get flashes of, granted, they're just using the art, right? You don't actually get to see them doing anything. But you get flashes of Wazy, Noel, Zen, Julia Swartz. You get Captain Morgan. You get all these different people. And Kevin Graham! And I lost my mind. I shouted. because I love Kevin Graham, and I wish Kevin Graham was playable in this game. I really do. I wish he was playable, but he's not. But you fight your way up the salt pails, right? You fight the bosses. It's very cool. Then you enter the Imperial Fortress. I think it's really interesting that each of the parties has to fight a boss that is equivalent to like something else that the others would have had, right? So like the SSS has to fight a dragon when the Bracer team from Liberl had already fought a dragon before, you know? And I think that's really interesting, the way they did it. But it's very good. You get to play as Zeno and Leo. You get to play as the other Stall Ritter. It's just very good, you know? It feels like a big finale, but it also feels really solid. It is a fun section of the game to play through, and story-wise, it's really cool to get to control these characters again. Then you get into the Imperial Fortress, and you have to go through a little ways of it. It looks a lot like Phantasma, gonna be honest, and that's pointed out. But you eventually get to Claire and Lecter. And you basically they don't want to fight you. They don't want to do this, but they have to. They are pretty much positive at this point that everything they're doing is wrong, but they're in too deep to be able to get back out. And so they fight you. And immediately after you beat them, they both try to kill themselves. But you knew ahead of time, the party knew ahead of time they were going to try this. And so they stop them. And basically from there, it's just like, yeah, no, we knew better. You know, how could we not have protected Milliam? How could we have allowed all these things to happen? But we wanted to believe that what he was doing was right. So now it's up to you to stop him. And then they pass out, and you go back to the garden, and you start on the next path. And the next one leads you to Cedric and Shirley. You fight them, and then you fight the next rivalry against Testarossa. And after you beat him, Cedric just like breaks. His confidence is shattered. He is defeated, and Kurt is able to give him that pep talk and pull him back out of it. And it's like, hey, none of your weakness, your problem with your brother, your problem with everything, none of that is what endeared me to you. You are you. It's okay to just be you, Cedric. And it's really interesting because in a lot of ways he's got the same problem that Alan did, right? I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to be somebody that would be recognized. I didn't want to be weak. I didn't want to be defended. And then here you are, and you have the Ashen Chevalier with you, and he's your teacher, and I'm nothing. And it's like, no, you're the emperor to be, right? You're the crown prince of Erebonia. But when you're in that kind of depression, you don't see what you have. You only see what others have. And it's really potent. I think it's a really, really good scene. And then Cedric, he's, like I said, he snapped out of it, and he passes out, hoping that they can succeed, right? And we'll go ahead and talk about this now because he does leave. He leaves with Shirley to join Ouroboros, which is really interesting. And I definitely want to know how things go from there. And his reasoning's not even bad, right? I can't go back. If I go back, it's going to be bad for everybody because I can't be put in jail because I'm the crown prince, but I also can't just walk back what I've done. And it's really interesting. I want to know how that goes, right? I want to see where that goes. But I liked that a lot. And then you go fight Maribel and Campanella. And man, this is the scene where Yuna like gets to the heart of it, and we learn something special about Ouroboros, which is the plans. I mean, we already knew the plans centered around the Septarians, right? But even their own members are kind of experiments as well. They don't super care what happens to them. It's mostly just seeing what happens, which is really interesting. But I like this fight a lot. I think Maribel is a good villain. Campanella is a good villain. And getting to see some of the facade break is really interesting. But I talked about the scene earlier when I talked about Eula. So Yuna. So yeah, it's good. I just combined a bunch of names into one there. Yeah, it's a good scene. And then you have to fight Black Alberic and Governor General Rufus. And of these fights, the Rufus one is my favorite. Because Rufus goes off his rocker. Rufus is like, hey, I am the one who decides the meaning of my existence. I will surpass my father. I will become the hero. I will rule the world. And it's like, Rufus. And the VA is putting in incredible work here. The scene is great. It's amazing. And it's like Rufus has lost his mind. But it's because of the pressure that he's under, right? His goal this entire time has been to prove that he is what he makes himself to be. And just like Osborn under Ishmelga, the mistake that he makes is that he doesn't utilize any of the bonds that he has. He constantly pushes people away or lies to them to try and succeed. And it's just not enough. And he had Eustace the whole time. But he squandered it. He had Millium. And he had Lecter. Had Claire. And he had Cedric. But he squandered them. Because all he cared about was himself. And it's one of my favorite scenes in this entire game. It's like top 5 for me. Is the scene where Rufus is just losing his mind. I love this scene. I love Rufus as a character. I think he is incredible. I love all the Ironbloods, really. I talked about Claire and how good she is. I talked about Lecter and how great he is. I really want to see some more scenes with him and Princess Claudia and Lucy. But it's all very good, right? I didn't even talk about the leader of Remiferia or President Rocksmith losing the election and he's going to get replaced by somebody else. I didn't even talk about all that stuff. There's so much to talk about, man. And I'm not even rushing. There's so much more, right? You beat Rufus in, again, an incredible scene. And then you go fight McBurn. And when you fight McBurn, you find out that there is a force, and they believe it to be Adios, stopping people from leaving Zemuria. And this answers a question that I asked in the very first review, which is, why don't people just sail around? Because Estelle makes a comment of like, we don't know what's past that ocean. And I thought it was just she didn't know. But like, nobody knows. Because they can't. And it just, my brain started spinning. And McBurn is the overlord of the beyond. And like there's divergent laws because the laws work differently somewhere else, and it's another world. And is it another world? Is it another planet? Or is it another dimension? Is Gehenna another dimension and not just literal hell in their universe? There's so much I want to know, and we find out the church has been hiding that stuff. I have so many theories. There's so many things I want to know. So many things that, like, in retrospect, mean different things now. I need to replay Sky the Third and see the Phantasma versions of Gehenna. Oh, it's so good. I just now realized I forgot to mention one of the best scenes in this game, which is after the salt pails have all been taken down, and the Courageous is, like, flying in to the Imperial Fortress, and everybody is, like, on the deck fighting, and you have Fro, and he's in Ordine, and you have Valimar, Reen in Valimar, and they're fighting, and they take out those two ions in mid-air combat, while everybody else, like, Machias is on the deck just shooting, and you have Elliot just, like, firing off from his staff. It's so cool. That scene is so good. And the main cannon's just firing. That scene's so good. But anyway, you beat McBurn. That's what we were talking about. And he remembers who he is, and then he almost becomes like a different person. He's just like, hey, yeah, I'm a lot more chill now. I know what I got to do. I'm going to leave. See ya, Crow. And Crow is like, so long. But it's interesting that McBurn doesn't say goodbye to Crow. Crow says goodbye to him. Almost like McBurn knew that Crow would be okay. We'll see. I don't know. McBurn's definitely coming back at some point. Then you go to the final battle. And you fight Osborn. Then you fight Ishmelga. And the fight's difficult, right? This is a tough fight. But when you emerge victorious, Reen takes Ishmelga into himself, basically, right? He has a final battle against Osborn in this like special spiritual place, and he defeats Osborn. And he takes Ishmelga into himself, right? And there's a really touching scene which mirrors Lloyd getting to talk to Guy and Estelle getting to talk to her mom, where Reen gets to talk to Osborn, and it's a very good scene. And Osborn is basically like, hey, I wish now that I'm free of Ishmelga, I wish that I could have been a better dad for you. And Reen is just like, well, I already had a dad, but it's nice to get to see the real you now. And there's a really nice moment where he's like, yeah, Osborn is like, yeah, in the same way that Kasha's your mom, Leanne could be your mom too. And it's a really nice touch as like Osborn and Dreichels have like fused completely, memory wise. And then Osborn leaves, Leanne and Rutger leave because they had showed up as well. And you have this really powerful moment of the normal ending, which is where, overcome by Ishmelga, Reen is barely able to contain Ishmelga. Everybody's excited until they notice that Valimar is being corrupted. And Reen decides to pull the Gundam move and goes, hey, this will work. And everybody's like, what do you mean this will work? What will work? And then he goes to take off into the sky to self-destruct. And Crow and Milliam fly after him, because Crow had promised him that he would be by his side until the very end. And then they explode. And these little feathers, these radiant wings, right, come descending from the sky, and everybody's crying, and everybody's broke. Elise hits the deck of the Courageous. Everybody's upset. And New Class 7 goes, hey, he'll be back. He promised us he'd be back. And everybody's just like, yeah, but none of them believe it. And it's a really good ending. I'm glad the true ending exists, but the normal ending is a very good ending. It is very solid. Then the game goes, hey, you did the side thing, right? Okay. You can reload your save. You don't even have to fight the final boss again. You reload your save right after the final boss, and something different might happen if you choose the new option. And you go, okay, sure, yeah. And Franz Reinfeld shows up and goes, hey, I forgot to mention in the normal ending, Black Albrecht dies alongside Ishmelga. But in the true ending, Franz Reinfeld is able to regain control. And he says, hey, you can use that thing that the divine beast of Earth gave you. Use that thing. And so Reen uses the prison and then is able to excise Ishmelga from his body in maybe what is one of like the coolest lines which is he is I and I am him, but you are not us. I completely forgot to talk about how Reen became a divine blade. I completely forgot to talk about how Reen became a divine blade. So this line that I just told you is a reference to when Reen becomes a divine blade, because he masters the void form by mastering the basics of all the other forms, right? And he has to fight against himself and had to accept himself in a very cool FF4 style, right? And it's he is I and I am him. And so in this, it's he is I and I am him, but you are not us. And separates himself from Ishmelga. And then Ishmelga takes on the form of like this giant beast with multiple snake tails, snake heads for feet, and a big dark dragon Zora Agruga style one arm, and a big demon thing, Testarossa style on the other arm. And then Ishmelga itself is like the head in the middle and the little eyes and everything coming off. And then you have to fight it. And everybody's like, how do we fight that thing? And Valamar's like, I forgot to mention Valamar can talk. I'll get into that when I talk about Valamar and Ordine in a minute. Valamar's like, I have used up all my power. And Ordine's like, yeah, no, we're done, buddy. And so it looks like you're going to lose. There's no way you can beat this thing, right? You can't even get up to it. It's huge. Thomas Lysander, man. Thomas Lysander, the partitioner, creates partitions for you. I know I'm getting excited, buddy. Creates partitions for you to be able to stand on. And then you get a team of Estelle and whoever you choose, right? And you get a team of Lloyd and the SSS and basically the Liberal team and the SSS team. And they each have their own side of it to fight, and then your team has the middle to fight. And as long as the left and right heads are alive, it can reflect magic and physical attacks. So, obviously, the first thing you do is you switch to Estelle's team and destroy hers, and then switch to Lloyd's team and destroy theirs. And because the orders that you got, if you have the Brave drops to be able to get 7 BP again, you just destroy this thing in like a single turn with S-Crafts. And then you take on the final part, and it's honestly not that hard. I had a lot more trouble with Osborne and with Ishmelga, because this thing's name is Ishmelga Loge, and honestly, it's not that tough. I think it took me like 16 turns total, and that's because I had to. It did kill a couple people, but mostly I was just switching out. And I switched in Ash to use his S-Craft, and I had left the Minotauros quartz on him, and so it took forever for his turn to come back around. I think if I had switched in literally anybody else to use their S-Craft, it probably would have been done a whole lot faster. But it was a fun final boss for sure. I enjoyed it. And then you get the true ending. And my favorite thing about this true ending is Crow gets to live, and Millium gets to live. And I know there will be people that are like, man, everybody gets to live. What is this? But I think that the real benefit is that, yes, they get to live, but it comes at the cost of some other characters. It comes at the cost of Franz Reinford, who could have used that ability for himself. And it comes at the cost of all of the other Divine Knights. They're forever gone, right? They're not reforming. They're gone. And Ordine, was Crow's bud. Ordine was there. Ordine was there for you and Valamar. Ordine was great. Ordine was a bro, right? But you have gone through most of this game. Since you got Reen back, being able to summon Valamar, it being the demon sacrifice form of Valamar, and not being able to speak, right? But when you beat Leanne Sandlot, and Millium is able to reform, Valamar suddenly is able to talk again. And coming from the previous games, especially from like Cold Steel 2 onward, where heed my call, Valamar the Ashen Knight, and then you hear acknowledged. There were so many times in Cold Steel 4 where I'd go to do that, and I wouldn't hear the acknowledged, and it would upset me. I wanted to hear Valamar say acknowledged again. And so then after Leanne, when you get that back and Valamar starts saying acknowledged again, you get like Reen and Valimar become even closer. And so Valimar sacrificing himself so that Milium and Crow can live is a really powerful moment to me. Because he wasn't just a machine. He was a member of the team, you know? The moments with Valimar and Mint, the moments with Valimar and Schmidt, the moments with Valimar and George. There were so many. The moments with Valimar and Yuna and them when they all go to, or like Ash talking to Valimar. There's so many good moments. And Valimar, Ordine, and Zector, and El Prado, and whatever the Argent Knight's name was again, I can't remember. They all sacrificed themselves, and Testarossa, to be able to save Crow and Milium. And also, like, Testarossas is, like, really potent as well to me, because Testarossa had finally gotten its sense of self back, free from the curse. And now it's like, yeah, this is what it is. And so they sacrifice themselves, and Milium and Crow are stabilized. And then we get an epilogue, which is just like, hey, here's all the stuff that happens. The bunch of reparations had to be paid. Makis' dad, Karl Regnitz, wound up being super important. The Emperor returned to duty. Things are still rough everywhere. Everything hasn't been solved. Rufus went to prison. Lecter and Claire were able to keep their jobs. Cedric has gone missing. Things are in bad shape, right? And despite that, the people are slowly healing. They had to pay a bunch of reparations to Calvard, but there's no war right now. Everything's good right now. For now, everything's okay. Ouroboros is still doing stuff, and there's a really cool post-credit scene where we finally get to see the Grandmaster. I'm assuming yes, but who knows, right? For real. And there's a really, really cool scene. But it's the scene where you get Milium back, where Milium gets a new body because Franz Reinfeld left you a final gift. That really got me. That scene of Eustace and Altina hugging Milium really got me. And so then you get the credit sequence. And this time it's the wedding. It's Olivier and Shara getting married. And all the other characters just like interacting with each other, hanging out, having a good time. You've got Ren teasing Tita. You've got Wazy and Noelle. You've got Rias with food, and Kevin's with her, and she's pulling him around to get more food. You've got Annalise is there. There's people are everywhere, and they're so cool. Cassius is there. Zen is there, and he's got his little box wine. And it got me, man. It got me so good. I really liked the credit sequence. It's really, really good. Getting to see Crow and George and everybody just hanging out, having a good time, and celebrating the fact that they made it through. Yeah, they lost Valimar and Ordine, and that sucks. But they made it through. Everybody's okay. Bunch of people died, but they were always going to, right? They couldn't stop everything. But it's okay. And for just a moment, they can all smile and they can all be happy. And you have like Milium grabs the bouquet when Cher throws it, and she's like leaned over on Eustace's shoulder, you know? It meant a lot to me to see everybody okay. Because I'm going to be honest with you. Going through this series, each game has had a pretty serious ending, right? It's been a pretty heavy cliffhanger for a lot of them. FC has a really, really rough cliffhanger. SC has a pretty solid ending where everything's like, it's probably the closest to this, right? Everything's going to be okay. Third has the really sad, like, everybody's going away scene, which cements that, hey, the story's not done because we still don't have Ren yet, right? Zero has things are getting better. Joshua and Ren and Estelle are all together, but we still don't have everything solved with Kia. Azure is like, man, Crossbell's in bad shape. Crossbell's in bad shape. Cold Steel 1 has Crow has turned on everybody, and Reen is being sent away by Valimar. Cold Steel 2 is Crow is dead, and things are not great. But at least for now, things are okay. But we know they're not great. We know it's going to get worse. Cold Steel 3 is Reen is missing. Millium is dead. Things are bad. And then Cold Steel 4 finally gets, hey, for now at least, everything's okay. And I've held off on talking about Reen on purpose until this moment. Because I think that the Reen that we get at the end of CS4 is a very different Reen from the one that we got at the start of CS1. And I was pretty critical of Reen early on. I won't deny that fact. But I think that the growth that he has gone over the course of these games, he has gone from, hey, I'm the anime protagonist that does everything, right? All the women love me, and I will do everything right. My mistakes are only such as will make things further, right? To, hey, sometimes I'm an idiot. Sometimes I make the wrong choices, but I'm doing my best, and I've got people with me that I can depend on. I don't have to try and do all this alone anymore. So I'm just going to trust the people that are with me. And I think it's really interesting that in the normal ending, the bad ending, Reen does the old Reen thing of, I have to do this myself. I can't try and get help from anybody. I have to do it my way. And in the true ending, he does the new Reen thing of, what other options do we have? Let me listen to the people that are around me. Let me depend on others. And it's really interesting to me. I like Reen a lot as a character. I still don't like him as much as I like Estelle, Lloyd, and Kevin. But I do like him. I think he's a very, very good character. I'm really fond of all of these characters. I think that Class 7 as a whole, Thor's as a whole, the Branch Campus as a whole, I think that they have managed to work this full cast, right? Crossbell cast, the Liberal cast are much smaller, and I do still prefer the smaller cast size, but I think that Cold Steel 4 pulled it off. I think it absolutely did. The cast is huge. Like, Taval and Ein Selnate get, like, no time at all, right? But they're there. And characters like Loggins and Friedel, you don't even get to see them in this game. But they're there, you know? And it just, I think, despite how difficult it is to pull that off, I think it did it. And I really, really like Cold Steel 4. I said I wasn't going to wear the length of this video, and we're like 2 hours in now. But ranking-wise, for me, right now, and this could change any day, right? Right now, it's Sky SC, Azure, Sky SC, Azure, Cold Steel 4, Sky the Third, Cold Steel 3, 0, Cold Steel 2, Sky FC, Cold Steel 1. Right now, Cold Steel 4 is my third favorite game in the series. And I think on a replay, it might challenge Azure and SC even more. But I also just really love those games. I want to specify that this top 3 is not just like top 3 for this series. These are some of my favorite games of all time now. I am so happy that I started this journey through the Trails games, and I honestly got super emotional when I realized that I had beat Cold Steel 4, because Reverie's not out yet, you know? There are ways to play it, but I'm going to wait for the official release. Kuro is a good ways out from coming over here, right? So now I have to wait. I've been able to play through all of them up to this point, but now I have to wait for the ending. And I have a lot of videos that I want to do on Trails. But this is a series that has absolutely changed the way that I look at big RPGs, the way that I expect world building to be done, right? Uh, Trails is an incredible series. And even the games that I don't like as much as I like the others are still incredible RPGs. I think that Cold Steel 4 is one of the best games that I've ever played. I think that what it managed to accomplish building up over the course of 9 games to this finale is really, really good. This story of a man that desperately wanted to stop this demon that was hounding him constantly. And so he gives in so that he can purge it from the world by sacrificing himself. And it Trail's the only series I can think of where they could take a villain like Gileath Osborne and redeem him. And it's crazy to me. Because Gileath Osborne has been a villain in my eyes since Sky FC. And this whole time, he was trying to be a hero. He was failing at it, but he was trying to be a hero. And I know some people might not like that, but I absolutely love it. I love Gileath Osborne as a character. He's so deep as a character, and I really, really like him. I really like this game. Cold Steel 4. I know there's things that I've forgotten to talk about. There's so much in this game. Little moments with Aurelia Le Guin. Little moments with Alphen and Elise and the Empress and the Emperor. The moment where he forgives Ash. The moment where he apologizes about Hamel. There's so much, right? There's so much to talk about. I barely touched on Agate or Tita or anybody there, or Sherazard. Shara is great in this game. Agate is great in this game. Agate is so good in this game. He's just Agate all the way. He constantly brings up Ravenu because it's like, yeah, don't forget about Ravenu too. This is all your fault, Osborne, and it's all Ishmelga's fault. Tita is great as usual. Her desire to be able to help her friends. That's Tita. I love Tita. You know, this is a great game. I wish that I could have played as Kevin Graham. I wish that I got to play as Zen. But at the end of the day, I got to have Duvali in my party and I got to have Crow in my party, and that's pretty dang great. So I guess let me know your thoughts on Cold Steel 4 in the comment section down below. I knew this one was going to be long. There was no way to avoid it. There's just so much. Because again, this is the culmination of 9 games. And it would have been so easy to mess that up. And they didn't. And I absolutely love Cold Steel 4. Let me know your thoughts on Cold Steel 4 in the comment section down below. We've completed this journey over 10 months. And I'm just so thankful for all of you that have taken this journey with me, that have watched the reviews and listened to me talk about Trails every week on the podcast for 10 months. And I can't believe that we've done it. I'm going to miss having the continuing story of these characters to go through, but I can't wait until Reverie. So until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum. Cold Steel and the Trail series has to offer.